Okay, welcome everybody. We're so happy to see all of you here tonight, and we're super excited to have this LEAP speaker this evening. So it is my pleasure to welcome you. I'm Carrie Williams. I am the Director of Service Delivery and Mentor Engagement here at ABCD. And I'm joined tonight by Keisha Jones, who is our Director of Community Partnerships. Um, and healthcare partnerships, as well as Ellen Freebert-Shepper, who is our executive director. So we're so happy that you chose to join us and spend your evening with us tonight. And I'd like to introduce our speaker. So Carissa Hodgson is here from Bright Spark Network. Carissa is a licensed clinical social worker. She's the director of programs and community outreach at Bright Spot Network. They provide programs of support to parents with cancer who have young children. She's got over 15 years of clinical and program experience working with families facing cancer. Her passion is supporting kids and families who are navigating cancer, shaped largely by her father, who had lung cancer when she was a child. Carissa has been a member of the Association of Oncology Social Work since 2015, as presently sits as co-chair of the Youth, Family, and Cancer Special Interest Group. In addition to her position at Bright Spot Network, she has a small psychotherapy practice and is a long-term lecturer at the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work at UW-Madison. So welcome, Carissa. We are so happy to have you. And I will let you begin.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited, Carrie. And just for everyone out there, it's best for me if you wouldn't mind holding questions till the end. I have plenty of time to answer questions, though if you're like me, you might forget your question. So feel free if you want to put it into the chat. I'll make sure I circle back to that when I finish the slides. So here again tonight talking about parenting through cancer, and whether you are a parent with cancer, your partner has cancer, or you just have kids in your family, I think this information will be relevant. Um, why this information is so important is that we have more and more kids having the experience of having a parent with cancer. So even American Cancer Society just released their newest data, and we're continuing to see the rise in cancer rates for adults ages 30 to 39, which of course tends to correlate to the ages when people have children. So we're seeing about 1 in 5 newly diagnosed cancer patients that have a child under the age of 18. So that's almost 3 million kids, or almost like 1 in 15, who have a parent with cancer. We also know that cancer affects the whole family, right? It's not just for the cancer patient. And we also know that a child's functioning is tied very closely to the well-being of their parents. So if a parent is really struggling and having a lot of anxiety, distress, depression, we're going to see that trickle down to the functioning of kids. So there's so much data and research supporting why we need to be helping kids as well. It's really their cancer experience as well. This is now, over 20 years old, but I think it's a relevant study that showed that kids who had a parent with cancer actually experienced greater distress than pediatric cancer patients. And I think the researchers really thought that they would see higher levels of stress in kids with cancer. To me, that makes sense. You would think, gosh, that has to be one of the, most difficult experiences for a human. But after they saw the results, they theorized that the kids with cancer were in on all of it, right? So they're the ones being poked and prodded, and as physically uncomfortable and painful as it is, there's no hiding it. They had all the information. And what we know is that so many parents, very well intentioned, what they do is they often try to hide a cancer diagnosis from kids because, again, they just don't want kids to worry. The unfortunate thing about kids is that they have these incredible imaginations. They make up really wonderful, but also sometimes fantastically scary scenarios. And so when they overhear hushed conversations, they're picking up on new words, they're sensing stress in a parent or caregiver, they see that the routine is different, new people coming in and out of the house, this is big for them. And if they're not told the truth, they're going to start to fill in the blanks and make up a story that's probably much scarier than what the truth is. And that's where we see that distress come in. So, by and large, I think like one of the main takeaways of this presentation is we want to be honest with kids. That doesn't mean we tell them everything, but if we're not being honest with kids, that's when we're going to see the greatest distress. So I'm going to take a break from that for just a second to say a little bit about Bright Spot Network and what we do. We are just turning 5 years old, and these are pictures of our executive director and co-founder, Haley Pollock, who was diagnosed with cancer after the birth of her second child. And she was having to navigate situations she never thought she'd have to. She had to wean before she was ready and had lifting restrictions. She was trying to figure out how to tell her pre-verbal toddler what was going on. And she had everyone in her life saying, they're too young, they don't understand, they'll never remember any of this. And that just didn't sit right with her. And she felt like, I don't know, like this is a big deal, even just for myself. I need more information. I need more support because my mom friends do not understand what it's like to be trying to parent through cancer. And my chemo buddies have no idea what it's like to be going through cancer while having to get up still in the middle of the night and tend to two kids. So she and another new parent got together and said, gosh, we're not really finding a lot of information out there for parents of young kids. And they really wanted to fill that gap. And what they created was Bright Spot Network. What we do is we support parents with cancer who are diagnosed during pregnancy or while parenting young children. We serve parents with any cancer diagnosis, any stage, living anywhere in the United States. We also serve partners and kids. Everything we do is free of charge, and our everything we do is also virtual. And the whole idea is that we want to connect parents to build community and give them the tools that they need to parent through a cancer diagnosis. Some of our just primary programs is we offer free books about cancer to help kids understand what cancer is, cancer treatment, big feelings, grief and loss. We have a free art box that is a wonderful point of connection between parent and child. We offer financial assistance. We have virtual support groups for parents in treatment and post-treatment, for partners, for parents with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, for couples. We offer navigation resources, connections for kids, including teddy bear clinics and monthly meetups, bright birthday cards, a Valentine's Day exchange. We do webinars, workshops, and have a wealth of web resources. And that's really one place I would really turn you to is if you want to go to our website. We have a lot of coloring pages that normalize medical procedures and concepts like what is a port, what is an ostomy, being tired, losing your hair, all of these kind of like new, big, possibly scary concepts for young kids that are done in very whimsical, cute little coloring sheets and customizable coloring books, videos for parents, feeling wheels, discussion guides, all of that is free and downloadable on our website. So again, I would really point you in that direction if you're looking for some resources. So getting back to, again, parenting through cancer. I've done this work now for, almost 17 years. And what I have learned is when a parent gets cancer, these tend to be the most important pieces to address. The first is that kids need safe, reliable, and empathetic caregivers. They need predictable routines and preparation for changes, and they need open, honest, and developmentally appropriate communication. I love this quote from a doctor who actually is a breast cancer survivor herself and a parent. She said, the greatest gift you can give your children is not protection from change, loss, pain, or stress, but the confidence and tools to cope and grow with all that life has to offer them. And why I like this is because, again, I have so many memories of having a parent come to me immediately after getting a cancer diagnosis and saying, my greatest worry is how to talk to my kids. I don't know how to help them cope through this. I know that I'll be okay, but I'm worrying about my kids. I get it. I'm a mom too. I know when you're a parent, often that's exactly where your head goes first is like how to help my kid. And that makes sense. That's healthy and normal. I also like to remind parents that often kids have some capacity to weather hard things. And sometimes I don't think we give them enough credit for it. And I've had so many parents, after they've really gotten through the bulk of their cancer treatment and enter survivorship, come back and tell me, I really had no idea that my child could do so many tasks independently. I guess I was actually doing more for them than they needed, because as soon as I couldn't, I realized they could tie their shoes, they could get dressed by themselves, they could make their own lunches. And you know what? Not only could they actually really enjoyed it. It gave them an opportunity to step into some of that independence that, honestly, I think I wasn't giving them. I think I was holding on too tight. So there are little instances like that where sometimes it's those silver linings, which again can be a really annoying phrase that doesn't always resonate. But here I think it works, which is with kids, there are opportunities for them to grow through this and to learn how to be possibly more independent, more empathetic, how to be a helper and to be caring. I've heard that even from older kids and teens who have said, I just feel like I'm in a different place where my friends don't get what's important in life. And now, having almost lost my mom to cancer, I understand how important our relationship is and how fragile life is and time spent with loved ones. Like I get that now. And if that is an outcome of this situation, well, at least that is something really positive. I always like to remind parents that they have a unique expertise on their kids. So while it's helpful to show up to talks like this and talk to doctors and therapists and psychologists, it's great to get information from experts. And no one knows your kids like you know your kids. So filter this through your own gut and figure out what makes the most sense. You may not have all the answers, but your presence, your attention, and your willingness to talk is the most important. Just showing up is what you need to do. It's always okay to say, I don't know. That's a great question. I'll do my best to find out the information. I'll come back to you. And as I said before, and it's just the repeat thread throughout this entire presentation, is honesty really is the best policy. Why? Because ultimately, we want our kids to trust us. We want our kids to come to us with questions before they go to Google, before they go to their friends, before they go to anyone else that may not be reliable. We want them to trust us and know that if they ask us a question, we will be honest with them. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy. That doesn't mean we're always going to tell them every detail. It just means that we want our kids to know that if they ask us a question, they're going to get true, reliable information. One of the first things when a parent has a cancer diagnosis, to think about is just sort of ongoing care for kids, especially if you have young children. So we want kids to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel soothed, and feel secured. So if you need to suddenly get in helpers to help with caregiving, especially if this is more of like an urgent diagnosis and you need to be hospitalized or you need to travel for surgery or a clinical trial or something like that, that's going to be your immediate concern. And as much as possible, we're trying to create very small, intimate caregiving teams for our kids, because that disruption can be hard. And so while we might be lucky enough to have this huge team of helpers, I'm always encouraging parents to think about who are like the 2 to 3 people your kids know the most, feel the closest with, the safest with, that can be that like inner circle caregiving team. We want to keep that pretty simple and basic, so there isn't a lot of change. Delegate then some of those other tasks that can be done outside of the home to neighbors and coworkers and friends. They're the ones that can do grocery shopping, take the dog for walks, do grocery shopping, whatever it is. We want to think about attachment for young kids, and that's one of the top concerns I get from moms in particular who have babies and have, toddlers, very young children. And if they are having mastectomy or some other major surgery and they no longer can hold and snuggle their young child, that is huge. And that is a very real grief that parents need to work through. And sometimes it's actually like clinical grief that they might want to talk to a therapist about, because that is really hard. And I hear so often from moms the resentment of, my kid used to come to me like I was the one that they attached to, and now they're not wanting me and they're preferring my partner. And well, of course, while I want them to have that relationship, I'm missing that closeness. So trying to find ways to maintain that physical proximity and touch, and having to be creative about it. So if you no longer can like hold and snuggle a young child, are there ways that you can lie next to them? Are there ways that you can give each other massages? Again, that physical touch that releases oxytocin is really important. You want that for both of you. Even older kids. And that can be hard for kids that are getting older, that are like really into roughhousing, especially if that's the way that you attach to kids. Having them to understand that we still want to have physical touch, but how can we have that be soft and gentle? Long-term planning is an issue that I know so many parents don't want to even think about. And especially when they have a cancer diagnosis, they might actually really bucket and say, if I have to think about creating some kind of advance directive or will, then that means I'm giving up. I understand where that comes from. And so many parents I talk to say, I didn't want to do this. I fought it tooth and nail, but I got to tell you, as soon as I got all of my legal affairs in order, it was like a monkey off my back. I felt so much better. And again, not every parent is going to do this, but I would encourage you to do it because I will even say from my own experience, when my dad died from cancer and I was 7, it was just me and my mom. And I started having panic attacks at 7. And I would be so scared of what would happen if my mom died because I thought it's just me and you now. So what's going to happen? And it wasn't until my mom sat me down and had conversations with me about, okay, let's talk about who you would live with. If you went to live with Aunt Pat, you might be closer with her, but you'll have to change schools. Or if you went to live with Aunt Frida, you could still stay in your own school, but maybe even stay in your same house. And so we talked about these pros and cons, and including me in that conversation gave me so much agency. And as soon as made that decision and my mom got it all finalized, my panic attacks subsided. So for me, that's exactly what I needed in my anxiety to feel safe and secure. I'm not saying that's what every kid needs. And again, you know your kids the best and how much they can handle, how much information and decision making. But don't just immediately discount their input and their knowledge or fears of what's happening. We talked about creating a support team. Not everyone is lucky enough to have people helping out. And I know that. A lot of people are. And so if you have these people that are saying, "What can I do? Let me know how I can help." Try and sort of create like this inner circle who can be there to show up for the intimate caregiving of not only your kids, but maybe you. Maybe you need some help with, changing drains or bandages or whatever it is, taking you to appointments. You want to keep those people like your close, intimate folks. And then think of just keep a list of all these other tasks that you can divvy out to other people that they don't even have to get inside the house. They can do things and either drop it off at your porch, or maybe it's doing research for you and emailing you. That can be really helpful. Ideally, you want to designate a team lead, probably not you or a partner. You want to get that maybe like one step out of the immediate circle. So maybe it's a best friend, it's a sister, it's a parent someone you trust that can kind of organize all of these people, probably using some kind of management platform. There are so many good ones out there. Like, lots of helping hands and caring bridge and my lifeline, and there's so many, and they're so wonderful at keeping calendars and sending out messages to everyone at once and making life a little bit easier. Peer connections are also essential. So, not only for you as a parent, because again, you might feel really isolated. This is a really tough time. So often I hear from parents like, no one gets it. My best friend, my family, they really have no idea what I'm going through. Yeah, they don't. They love you and they want to support you in any way they can, but they don't really get it. So, you want to find other people that understand. If you have a partner, they also are probably feeling isolated and alone and like no one understands, and they feel like they can only be that bright positive cheerleader, but they have some, angst and anxieties and fears and anger that they're going through, but they often feel like they can't share that. So they need their own circle of support. Kids need that as well. I so often when I would be doing in-person groups for kids at Gilda's Club Madison, would hear from parents that they would be coming to this weekly group, and then something would come up where they were going to miss, and the kids would say, "Absolutely not! Like Tuesday night is our night. This is when our group is. I need my people, Dad. Like this is my special time." It's important. Kids need to see other kids who have a mom who is bald. a dad who's using a walker, whatever it is. It's that validation, that feeling normal, because so many kids don't know other kids who have a parent with cancer. Ideally, you're trying to have a point of connection with kids every day. Hopefully, that includes some kind of physical touch, or if kids don't like touch and sensory kind of, connections like that, just even proximity, just showing up. Maintaining expectations and rules. Some parents say, oh my God, this is so much. We're just kind of going to just let everything go. And again, I know where that comes from because in general, you also need to be pretty accommodating and flexible when there's a cancer diagnosis. But if you completely let go of what you expect from your kids, honestly, they might worry. I've had teens tell me, I didn't start to worry until my mom stopped asking me if I had my homework done. I didn't start to worry until my mom stopped caring that my room looks like a pigsty. Like these were things that were very important to her before cancer, and now she could care less. And that makes me think things must be really bad. If she doesn't care, it's got to be bad. So kids actually kind of count on having those expectations continuing so that that's again, it's just like normal life as much as possible. Of course, there is going to be some flexibility. You're not going to be able to hold everything together the same way you did before cancer because you have a lot on your plate. So I know I have so many parents coming to me saying, I think I might need to give in a little bit about my screen time rules. I might need, now that grandma and grandpa are with the kids every day after school, clearly their kids are eating more sugar. I have a hard time with that. I don't like what they're feeding the kids. I don't want them to have ice cream every day. Ugh, but I also need the help. So maybe I just need to be okay with that for a month while I finish treatment. So I think there are some things you can give on if they're not super important and hold on to the things that are important. So identify really what sort of very specific expectations or rules you want to hold to and you want your caregiving team to hold to, and what can you give up and just be a little bit more flexible with because it's temporary, right? And then everyone's going to have to get through this and settle back into a new routine. We want to give kids many ways to process big feelings. We know that the main way that kids process is through play. Give them tons of time to play, whether that's you playing with them, unstructured time, them playing on their own. They're going to play out a lot of their thoughts, worries, and feelings. And remember that they're not always playing out exactly what they're thinking. If you're seeing something that seems a little scary or disturbing, that doesn't mean that's exactly what they're thinking. It just means kind of like that's in their magical world, how they're processing. Kids don't tend to want to talk like a lot of adults face to face looking at each other in the eye. That's not the kind of way that they want to talk it out. Often parents find the best conversations when they have their kids in the car and kids are sitting behind you. Neither of you have to really look each other in the eye and you're moving and you can look around. Or maybe it's that you're on a walk together or you're playing a game of basketball outside. Those are those really kind of magical times of connection that you're engaging and doing something else and you can free your brains to just be a little bit more open to share like what you're worried about or what you're thinking about, what you're angry about. It might be opportunities for mindfulness practices, doing different yoga stretches as a family, sharing gratitudes at the dinner table, reading books together. Again, that's why we love books so much for young kids, is that's typically an activity that parents do with kids anyway, is reading them books. So as you're trying to introduce them to this new concept of cancer and cancer treatment, there's so many wonderful books. Get them from the library. Sit down, snuggle up, have that physical snuggle time and read them books. Stop, ask questions. Figure out what your kid is learning from the book and how you can make connections between that story and your family. There's so many wonderful things that you can do with books. The other thing I would say that kids tend to really struggle with are changes. So, as much as possible, we want to prepare kids for upcoming changes that will affect them. Kids are very egocentric, that is developmentally appropriate. They think about them, like who's going to take care of them, what's happening to them, how do changes affect them. So, giving them a way to anticipate changes. This is where a calendar or schedule could really be useful. Even for very young children, you can use visual schedules. Mighty and Bright makes this one, and they even make these calendars with cancer specific stickers you can use about when mom's going to be at treatment and maybe have her sort of tired days or when grandma and grandpa are going to be picking you up from school. And this will just kind of give kids a week at a time major things they can anticipate so that they know, oh, tomorrow this is going to happen. That sense of agency and control really helps to keep the anxiety down. If you know that a big change is coming, such as you're going to be gone for a while because of treatment, surgery, if you know that you'll be losing your hair, you'll be having a mastectomy or, getting a port, an amputation of some kind, an ostomy, anything that really kind of changes who you are and what kids see, give them a few days heads up. Usually that's about the right time frame. Too much more than that, then that's like too much time for them to really worry, but not enough time is too scary. So just enough time to inform them, give them the facts, answer their questions, and then let them kind of weather the change and process afterwards. I've talked about having open, honest, and developmentally conversations with kids, as much as possible, trying to keep our sentences very short and very simple. I even sometimes dial it down even more because I really want to meet kids where they're at. Adults, me included, tend to say a lot. We fill in the blanks. We go on and on and on and on. We want to just offer like short phrases, pause, and then check in with our kid. We want to define words that our child will overhear. So, definitely cancer. If you're getting chemo, talk about chemo or chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, an oncologist. All these words that are relevant to your cancer situation, define them. This is, again, why you would want to use a book because what's wonderful about one of these children's books is they're going to define it for you and probably have pictures to explain it even better. Try to avoid metaphors with young children. They're very concrete thinkers. So I think sometimes I see problems when parents are talking to young kids about cancer being a monster, for instance, and then kids really do start to think of a monster in their mom's belly, and then they really get scared about this monster and wondering if the monster is going to come at them. So I find that kids tend to do better when you're just very factual. You might want to consider planning out your message ahead of time. You might want to practice with your best friend. And do be careful of promises. I would say this is the other area that I see people trip up on a lot. Parents, because again, they want to bring comfort to their child. Again, I'm a parent, I get it. They often will make promises that they can't keep. The number one that I hear over and over is, I promise I won't die. If I could ask you to do one thing, it would be please don't ever tell your child that because right there you've lied to them. We are human, we will die, all humans die. Now, I know death is my thing. I teach a graduate course on death and grief and loss, so I know that of all people, maybe I care more about it than others, but I find that you're just, setting your kid up if you're not being honest about that. So while you can be certain to say, I promise that I'm doing everything I can to get better. I promise I'm, really working hard to feel good. I mean, there are a lot of things you could say you're working really hard on. You certainly can't say that you're not going to die. These are some examples of very short sentences. I almost think of it as like magnetic poetry, where you might want to write out everything you want to cover and then simplify the sentences even more and maybe even cut them out, move them around. So, like a first conversation with a kid might include just saying, I have cancer. I'm going to the doctor to get better. I'm getting a medicine called chemotherapy. Chemotherapy may make me feel a little sick and tired. You can hug and snuggle me all you want, and you will never catch cancer. Nothing you did or said caused me to get cancer, and you can always ask me questions. Maybe just start there. Super simple. And then in a couple days, circle back and say, hey, I wanted to talk to you again about what I said before. What do you remember about me saying the word cancer? Checking in and almost, asking your kids to define it back or repeat it back gives you a gauge of how much did they understand and how much did they remember. And then you can go in and fill in the blanks. Kids tend to wonder about these 4 C's. So they want to know, can I catch it? Did I cause it? Can I cure it? And who will take care of me? So you cannot cover these enough, over and over and over. Cancer is not your fault. Nothing you did or said made someone get cancer. It doesn't matter that you were mad and you hit me in the boob and then I told you I have cancer in my boob. That's not because you hit me. That just was a weird coincidence. You did not cause me to get cancer. Cancer is not contagious. That may be confusing because I'm wearing my mask a lot now and saying I don't want to get sick because I'm worried I'm immunocompromised. And let me tell you about that word, but that doesn't mean you can catch it, right? And in this world where we're, talk, especially this season of flu and COVID and colds, um, cancer itself is not contagious. I try to use the word cancer, or if I'm going to say a different word, I might call it a disease, but I try not to say cancer is a sickness only because that can be confusing to kids. It's not your job to make me feel better. That's why I have this amazing team of doctors and nurses and social workers. This is what they're doing. They're helping me to get better physically. You know what you can do? You can give me hugs and snugs. That's exactly what I need. Maybe you can get me some warm, fuzzy socks. That would be great too. But that's all I need from you. No matter what happens, you'll be loved and cared for. So again, this is because kids worry like, what's going to happen to me? So, we're going to make sure grandma and grandpa are here to be with you after school. We're going to make sure that auntie is here to pack your lunches. We're going to make sure that neighbor Joe gets you to soccer practice, whatever it is. Like, we're going to make sure that your needs are taken care of. And again, check in with me. Any question you want to ask, please come ask me. I will be honest with you. And if I don't know, I will do my best to find the answer. I will let you know if anything big changes, especially for older kids. They're going to start to wonder, like, are you really telling me everything? And you have to follow up on that. So then, if you get a new development that's pretty important, it's important that you do say, hey, I just want to let you know that at my appointment today, I learned that this line of treatment isn't working. Like, and they're going to be like, what does that mean? What it means is that we're going to try this other medicine. The doctors feel pretty good about it. I'm going to start it in a couple of weeks. Okay. Okay, I'll let you know how it goes and how I feel. Again, every kid is different. Even if you have identical twins, they're going to respond very differently. So you might need a different approach. Some kids are super emotional. Some kids just really need the facts. Some kids have tons of questions. Some kids, like this is so often like expect the unexpected on here, but so often hear from parents that are like, I was prepared for my kid to be really upset and have all these questions. I sat them down and had this conversation, and they just looked at me and said, can I go play now? Yep, that's a pretty common response. Like, kids often, when they're given new information, they sort of just can hold it for a second, and then they need to compartmentalize, and then they need to regulate by going to do something that is comforting. So if that's like, I need to go play, I need to go watch a show, can I get on my tablet? Yeah, like, give them a moment to then do what they need to do to actually distance themselves and take a breather. That doesn't mean you can't circle back to it and keep talking. It just means be aware that, kids are going to take in big new information in different ways. It's okay to show emotions. I have so many parents ask me, like, is it okay to cry in front of my kids? Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to like melt down and feel like you can't take a breath because you're just bawling your eyes out. Ideally, you would do that with your best friend or your therapist. But of course, like, if you're sad, this is a time to model appropriate expression. Say, I'm just feeling really sad, or I'm just feeling really scared right now. I know everything will be okay, but right now I'm feeling scared. And it's okay to feel scared. Just normalize that for your kids. Consider giving new or big information to kids at a time that's right for them. So probably not right before bed or not before a big test or a big game. Figure out kind of like the time that works best for them and the way that works best for them. Again, is it in the car? Is it while you're going for a walk? How is it? Listen for underlying messages. Sometimes this is an issue and sometimes it's not. I think about an instance where a mom said her child kept asking her, are you going to be at my band concert next month? And she kept saying, yes, yes, it's on the calendar, yes. And then she realized what her child was asking her was really, are you going to be alive next month? So while, of course, we don't always pick up on that, if something seems off or like a question keeps being repeated, take a moment to just think, am I really hearing what my child is asking? Could I take a step back and think of this from a different angle? Schools can be a really great source of support, especially, if you have kids that go to school all day, they're there for a big chunk of their day. And there are teachers and social workers and nurses and psychologists there that could be a wonderful source of support. Whether they're meeting with your kid to check in, just keeping an extra eye out, offering some flexibility. Maybe your kid is very different at school and you don't know. I mean, I know so many kids that hold it together at home and then they kind of fall apart at school. As a parent, you'd want to know that. So ideally, you have at least one contact at the school that you've told them what's happening, and you can say, please let me know if there are any important updates I need to know about or any extra support you can give them at school. In general, this idea of the message, controlling the message, is something to consider because as soon as you start to tell anyone about cancer that's outside of that immediate circle, you have to think that the information might come back to your kids. So if you're trying to keep it a secret or hold on to information that you don't want your kids to have, think about who you've told because I actually know many, many, many circumstances, especially in small towns when but like everyone knows everyone and sort of knows a lot of business of others. And again, very well intentioned where someone will come up and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just heard about your mom and her cancer." And if you haven't told your kid yet and your kid's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" That could happen. So this is when you just really want to think about the messaging and how your kid is going to find out. You want to be the one to have that conversation. If you are separated, ideally the relationship is at least good enough that you can be on the same page. But certainly, at least when your child is with you, then you want to be giving them the correct information and supporting them through feelings and letting them know what resources they have when they're with another parent. Like I said, ideally, if your kids are asking questions about death and dying, you can be honest with them. You can share your own beliefs and cultural traditions about that. You can give them factual information. There's so many great books about death and dying for kids that can be just, again, some are very factual, some are very poetic and beautiful. I use so many books, even with adults, who find them to be really helpful and um, really supportive. And I will say that usually it's adults that tend to have more issues talking about death than kids. Kids tend to be more open, by and large. Wash, rinse, repeat. These are not one and done conversations. You're probably gonna have to circle back many, many times. And I just want to end on this quote that I love. Life is not fair. Life hurts. Life is good. These three seemingly incompatible expressions are really three parts of the whole of living. They are threads woven through the tapestry each one of us creates as the visible expression of our being a part of humanity. To accept these three is not to abandon hope or optimism, or to deny our real grief. To accept them is to rid ourselves of the unnecessary suffering that comes from struggling against these three truths and trying to make them something they are not. There are so many losses that parents go through, that kids go through when they're navigating cancer. Trips that they had planned to go on, parties they wanted to go to, time together. It could be real loss. It could be the death of a parent. So no one is trying to sugarcoat this and say, "Oh, it's all good and everything's going to be fine." This is hard, and so I am certainly not trying to say like this is all just growth opportunity. Everything's going to be fine. It'll be hard. There will definitely be hard moments. And there can be good moments. And this weird thing is that just like life, it's this weird combination of all of it all together, all at the same time. I do want to take a moment to address any distress because there will be kids that have a hard time and they'll need a little extra support. We see kids so often trying to be the smile makers. They want to make their parents happy. They want to make them smile. And when they feel like they're not doing that and they might be failing because they see their parent feeling so awful, they might take it on as like their own personal failing. In general, parents know, like, if your kid is just having a hard time. Typically, it might be a disturbance in what they say is the big four. So, is there a big regression in development? Your kid was really potty trained and now they're wetting the bed every night. Or like language development is really different. Are they having a hard time in school? Are they sleeping too much or too little, eating too much or too little? For young kids in particular, you might see a disturbance in one of those. But in general, is it like for a couple of weeks, has your kid consistently been different? Are they all of a sudden having all these tantrums and exploding? Or the opposite, are they just totally withdrawn and always in their room and never talking? Do you notice that all of a sudden they feel like they need to be your caregiver? Even though you've told them you have a caregiving team, but they feel like it's their responsibility and they're saying, I need to skip soccer practice because what if you need me and what if you need my help? Yeah, that might cue you into going, you know what? I think my kid could handle a little extra support. And that doesn't mean that something is wrong with your kid. That just means they're trying to figure out how to get through this really big change. That's normal and that is okay. If you're looking for some extra support, Look for an individual family therapist who ideally understands cancer and chronic illness, and someone that has experience working with kids, because so many kid therapists, they're not going to do talk therapy. They're going to, do play therapy, art therapy, movement, something that, again, is very engaging and fits with the development of where kids are at. If your child experienced something really traumatic, like the ambulance being called and they're having nightmares all the time and they can't stop thinking about that moment, there's a very specific type of therapy called EMDR that can help kids to just dial down the experience of that traumatic memory. There are also lots of, I'd say informal supports. I mean, they're still very, very valuable, but they're not typical therapy. And I don't like to forget about how important these helping professionals are. At school, you have access to social workers, counselors, nurses, teachers, coaches. Just think about like who are all of the caring adults that your child has contact with that could offer that extra support. At your hospital, you might have a social worker, a child life specialist, someone that can meet with your child or give you resources. They might even be able to arrange for a tour. Now, after COVID, maybe not always, but like I know I had a family where the child was so anxious about his dad's radiation for a brain tumor, and all he could think about was like the scary mask and a gun pointed at his head, and he had all these worries and nightmares. And they were able to arrange for the child to come in and get a tour of the radiation center and look at the machine and the mask, and his worries came way down. So, like, are there ways that you can, get your kid, either if they can't come into the clinic or center, could you watch videos? There are lots of videos online now about like taking a tour and demystifying kind of what happens at the clinic. Do you have a spiritual center that you can connect with and leaders or groups there? There are great camps for kids and teens. Kesem is one of them. Are there other local families you can connect with, either locally for like informal meetups, or do you have local in-person support groups, something like a cancer support community? Online support. So again, if it's like you can't even leave the house, maybe everyone's immunocompromised or just it's just too much. You can't get everyone in the car, everyone's schedule's hectic. Check out Bright Spot, check out Wonders and Worries, check out Pickles. They're really great online support networks for not only you, but your kids and teens as well. I said before that I had a chance to do a little research with parents, and they really did tell me that while, of course, they didn't ask for this, and cancer really sucked, cancer did teach them and their kids how to be empathetic, how to be self-reliant and confident, how to connect with and appreciate each other, and how to appreciate life and find the silver linings. So this is one of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes, and I think it's relevant here because what I keep thinking and what I want to really get across is that what kids care about, what they need, is for you to show up. That's what's most important because you know what? You're going to say something stupid. You're going to mess up because you're human. We all do it, but we can always make a fix up, right? And so I want to maybe help just ground you in this idea that kids will forget what you said, kids will forget what you did, but kids will never forget how you made them feel. So if you make them feel seen and heard, important, that you trust them enough to tell them the truth, that's what will get them through. So I'm just going to stop this and open it up to questions if anyone has any.
Carissa, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It's been really great and really great information. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carissa, I don't have a question, but just a kind of a comment in alignment with what you stated earlier. I was thinking of my own diagnosis with the attachment piece and kind of letting kids maybe do something that they think that maybe you normally did for them. So I'm just thinking of my granddaughter, and when I wasn't able to lift like over 10 pounds, and normally, reaching down to pick her up, but then it's like, okay, nope, like I'm just going to sit on the couch and let her come to me, and like climb up, kind of show me her climbing skills. And so it kind of just, made that we could still, kind of have some playtime, but I didn't have to pick her up. And then now she was kind of using some muscles and doing it a different way versus me always reaching down to pick her up. So, so no, I appreciate what you've shared, different tips and techniques that parents can use as they go through.
That's a great example, right? I think we're so used to, I mean, it's habits, right? We have our own ways of interacting with our kids. So when you have to stop that automatic way of interacting, it's hard. But you can create new natural habits. And maybe actually it pushes you outside of that rote behavior that maybe you actually develop new, interesting, fun ways. And I mean, I know I've talked with parents who actually like created these really fun, silly games that only came out of cancer because they had to lay on the couch and they're like, I'm having to parent from the couch and they have to get really creative about how to have fun with their kids. And then, well, out of survivorship, their kids are still begging to play these games that for the parent is like, oh my God, these were like my chemo games, but it's my kid's favorite activity and they still ask to do it with me. So, again, that's kind of the magic of kids is they just want to like be playful and hang out with you and they don't have all that baggage of necessarily what it means. They just want to be with you. I'm going to put my email in the chat just in case anyone wants to reach out with any questions. I'm always happy to be a resource.
Yeah, I had one question. Just when you talked about other people and talking to your kids about that and, having that good support network around you, it's also hard. And I've heard people call in like that get frustrated when people come up, especially when you don't have hair visibly or not well. And they'll talk to your child who's standing next to you about you and how to kind of shield them from that or, talk to your child about that later. I just spoke to a woman recently that was, like somebody just came up and said, "Oh, how's your mom doing?" And the whole thing. And I'm standing right there and I was like, "Oh no." So, yeah, how would you suggest like talking to your child about that later? Just people are going to say inappropriate things, which we all know, but kids don't understand that sometimes.
You're so true. And that happens most of the time.
Mhm.
Certainly if like you were there, like that in particular, I would have, like, as the parent, I would have kind of like physically almost like made myself known and then answered. Because like, oh,
Mhm.
actually,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't be a jerk about it, but I would just like take that over because that's not my child's responsibility. Then
Right.
at home, follow up and say, gosh, I'm sorry that happened. How did that feel? Kind of like be like, how was that for you? Because maybe my kid would be like, oh, I love it when people ask me. Maybe I don't want to assume like that they had a
Mhm.
hard time with it. And then just kind of explore, like, do other people ask you how I'm doing? How do you answer? How does that feel when people talk about me or ask how I'm doing?
Mhm.
How would you like me to handle that? And just have a conversation. Again, how are they feeling about it? What situations have they had to navigate? Maybe things are happening that you didn't even know. This is a great opportunity to
Sure.
check in. What do you need from me? Can I help prepare you for that? You might have kids that, again, if they hate it, if they're like, oh my God, yeah, people keep talking to me about it and I don't want them to, come up with some kind of statement they can give that feels right to them to get the attention off of them. So maybe for them, for the student or for the kid, it's something like, I don't really want to talk about my mom right now, but thanks for asking. Something that can be kind but simple that just kind of distracts. I think too many parents, I see this happen all the time, try to figure out how to intervene for the kid. Like, okay, well, I'm going
Sure.
to tell your teachers not to ask you, and I'm going to tell, and they try and cover all the bases of how to shield their kid. And
Mhm.
while that's not like the worst idea, I always try and think about like, if I had to get to just the crux of it, well, if I give my kid the tool to handle whatever happens, then I don't have to worry about covering all my bases. Like I'm
Sure.
empowering them to do what they need and I also always want to give them an adult they can go to. So like if I'm not around, let's identify
Mhm.
like who would be your adult when you're at school that you could go to if you feel like you need help. Who would be your adult at the after school program? When you're at swim class, whatever, like who would be the person if you need help? And as a parent and as a professional, I'd go, if I feel like I gave my kid a tool, something they could say, and I made sure that they have a caring adult, that feels like a pretty good
Mhm.
coverage that no matter what, they'll be able to weather a situation, and then we can always debrief as a family, me and them, when we get home and feel safe.
Great. Thank you. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions in the chat, but thank you all for joining us. And Carissa, thank you again. It was so nice to see you again and listen to all the great things that you're doing at Bright Spot and beyond. I know we'll be in touch. And yeah, we'll be sharing this out to people that would like it. So please feel free to reach out to Carissa directly or to us at ABCD. And everyone have a great evening.
Thank you, Carissa.